Shut up and sit down.
Hello, Phantoms fans. Welcome to the Dump and Chase podcast. I'm Sam Olmstead.
And I'm Justin Irwin.
Let's do it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of the Dump and Chase podcast. My name is Sam Olmstead, and with me, as always, he's funny, charming, intelligent, witty, a great dancer, and those are just some of the ways he describes himself on his Tinder profile, Mr. Justin Swipe Right Irwin.
Well, all those things must be true. The alcohol says so.
Alcohol can be a very convincing mistress.
Yeah, that's what the cops keep telling me.
All right, so finally, I think we really get to have, a happy show. We haven't had that in a little while. The episode last week, we had said that this was big boy time for the Phantoms, and they really needed to step up this past weekend. Boy, did they ever, against two very good teams. Kicking it off Friday night in Chicago. Yeah, the Phantoms came out pretty quick in that game. After two periods, they were up 3-0. Chicago, two early goals in the third period, brought it back within one. Aiden Gallagher picked up an empty net goal there towards the end of the game, his second goal of the game. Just a few odds and ends to mention. John Beaton, excellent penalty shot there in the second period. And then another thing we got to see was the return of the Trevor Kuntar, Riley Funk, and Yusaku Ando line, and right away paid dividends. Trevor Kuntar getting a goal in the second, Ando assisting, so kind of kicked it off right there. Altogether, just light years ahead of what we've seen from the Phantoms the past few weeks.
They were still kind of lacking in the shot department, but that doesn't matter so much when they're actually going in. Yeah, like you said, the John Beaton penalty shot, nice, simple, quick, takes the shot early, and has the goalie just totally handcuffed. The two Chicago goals, I could call foul on both of those, especially the first one. The net was clearly off the moorings, and they reviewed it and somehow came up with the conclusion that that was a goal. The second one could have been argued that should have been called offsides, but that's neither here nor there. Nikolai Jensen came back for a game, played really well, good enough to get suspended for another 3, so that's another, it's what it is. So,
as far as that first goal, I believe it was that first goal they scored, the net off the moorings. I don't know what they were looking at there. Thankfully, the karma gods kind of came back around in a way later on in the weekend, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The point you made as far as shots, again, Youngstown only had 16 shots in the game, and it seems to be this weird thing. This is the second time this has happened with Chicago. The shots in that game were 38-16, but the Phantoms were able to get 4 goals off those 16 shots. The game back on October 13th, when Chicago was in Youngstown, that was the Phantoms 4-3 loss in overtime. The Phantoms only had 15 shots in that game, but had scored 3 goals. So for some reason, not getting a ton of shots on goal seems to work against Chicago better than it has other teams in the league.
Yeah, it's one of those fluky things. I don't think I'd read too much into it. I'd rather get the shots on goal than not. But yeah, when you're walking away with points, it doesn't really matter how you got them.
So then we move into the game on Saturday with Muskegon and start off how we kind of expected might have started off with Muskegon. Muskegon played a pretty solid period in the first. Phantoms were down 1-0 after the first period. The second period, the Phantoms that we have pretty much been waiting for all season finally showed up. Just completely dominated the period. 3 goals, 2 by Yusaku Ando, one of those on the power play, which is something we haven't seen a lot of. And Artyom Borshov with a goal that put the Phantoms up 3-1 after 2 periods. Muskegon came back in the third period, 2 goals to tie the game at 3. The game went to overtime, and this is where we had Tripgate. Basically, the end result was you had Josh DeLuca and Jason Dobé on a 2-on-1 break up the ice. DeLuca was able to get a nice cross-ice sauce to Dobé, who put it in the net for the game winner. How good was it to watch that second period? And we had said, a lot of our frustration had come from the fact that what we saw in that second period is what we've been expecting all year from this team.
When you see the guys finally something clicks there, and it wasn't just that we were getting shots, that we were getting goals. It was more just the energy level went up 100 times. You could feel it just even watching it online. So you could tell they just finally got that little bit of spark that they needed and started feeding off of each other. And, Muskegon, unfortunately, was on the other end of that. Another thing to point out, we got 4 of the 8 goals from defensemen. So the blue liners are jumping up on the play, and that's, really, really helping out. In fact, I did the math, I think 11 of our 42 goals, a little over 26% this season, have come from defensemen. So that's something to keep an eye on here.
So then we get to the alleged tripgate at the end of the game that led to the Phantoms winning goal. Essentially, the scene is the Phantoms are in the defensive zone. Muskegon has possession of the puck. Luke Mobley from Muskegon takes the puck down below the goal line. Lavari Rasanen, I believe it's how it's pronounced, he was moving into the slot, looking for the pass, and he ended up getting tied up by Riley Funk. They kind of came together. Mobley didn't have the lane, so he took the puck around to the back of the net, and as he came around the back of the net and tried to wrap around, you had Rasanen and Funk still tied up together. They end up hitting Mobley. Mobley goes down. Phantoms go the other way. Now, what a lot of Muskegon fans are claiming was that it was a blatant trip. It should have been called a penalty. We took the highlight video, we slowed it down, we turned it into a GIF. And when you watch, it was not Funk who actually tripped him. It was Rasanen tripped his own teammate on the way around. So no, not a blatant trip. I guess kudos to the referee in that situation. The referee was right there. So, kudos to him for, not making that call right there, letting him play. The funny thing to me is it seems to be the whole argument with that. Muskegon was screwed out of a win. They were, screwed out of their win streak they had going. It's just kind of this weird assumption that if they would have called a tripping penalty somehow, even though there was still 50 seconds left in the game, and then you would have had the shootout, that somehow that automatically meant Muskegon was going to win if that penalty was called.
I don't know. I mean, fans always see, kind of what they want to see. I can understand where, if you were sitting there watching the game live in the stands, you might not have seen exactly how that play developed. You got kind of a good view of it from the hockey TV feed. Yeah, Funk and Rasanen just were kind of tangled up going up the ice. Rasanen wasn't paying attention to where his stick was, and you could clearly see it just sweep through the skates of his own player. And yeah, I think the Muskegon fans are just a little salty.
Yeah, any other time it's just kind of live and let live, it's over, move on, but seeing as it's 4 or 5 days later and some of them are still harping on it, we're going to have our say in the matter too, but the difference is we've got the video evidence to back us up, so.
Yeah.
Nice try, wipe off the tears, move on. You guys had other games to play. Sorry.
Yeah. You got a point. That's 1 out of 6 this year. That ain't bad. Oh wait.
Well, so far it's 3 out of 6, so we're looking pretty good. So as far as this weekend, it's a lot of what we've talked about with this bit of a downturn the Phantoms have been on. What's gone wrong, what's not working. This week we actually get to go through a what went right. And the first thing was getting the puck on net. Some people will say, it's more the quality of shots than actually getting shots on net, which to a certain extent is true. But at the same time, especially at the beginning of the year, the goalies are getting their feet under them. Scoring's a lot higher at the beginning of the season than you may see towards the end. And just the fact of the matter is, if you're not putting the puck on net, you're not giving yourself a chance to put the puck in the net. So, I do think in a lot of ways, shots on goal matter.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say on the quality of shot. Yeah, I mean, that was maybe the Friday game, Chicago. You can make that argument, but if you're not scoring, if you're not winning, then the argument is invalid.
Yeah. Now, the funny thing kind of was, the game on Saturday with Muskegon, Youngstown ended up outshooting Muskegon 41-34. And just for a kind of frame of reference, in the second period, Youngstown had 18 shots on goal. That is more than total in 4 games this season. 4 games this season for the Phantoms, they had less than 18 shots.
The whole game.
The whole game. And the second period in Muskegon, 18 shots on goal. And what do you get out of it? You get 3 goals and just completely dominate the period. Another thing for the Phantoms, and this even kind of stretches back, even though they were blown out by Team USA the weekend before, it does stretch back to that as well, is the Phantoms penalty kill, which we have beat that horse to death so many times in the past few weeks. Against Team USA, the under-17s, the Phantoms penalty kill was 5 for 5. The game against Chicago, they were 3 for 3. And towards the end of the Muskegon game, they reached the point where they actually had a streak of 13 straight penalty kills, which the way the penalty killing has gone, that was huge for this team. Muskegon did ended up getting a power play goal there at the end of the game, but I mean, overall, just those last 3 games, that is 1 for 14. I mean, that's what their penalty kill gave up. And I mean, definitely a vast improvement there. And plus it also helps because, teams will get that kind of momentum and get that little bit of a boost from, killing a penalty. And when you're just giving up power play goal after power play goal, it's really hard to get the momentum. It's really hard to get that boost. I mean, to me, especially this past weekend, that was something that really contributed to the way they played.
Yeah, and you kind of have to figure going into the Muskegon game, that's a big rivalry game. We beat them twice already. You knew that one was going to have a lot of penalties. We were 1 for 9 on the power play. They were 1 for 6. So if we had been giving up penalties like we had, previous weeks, that could have been a real bad omen for us, especially, the first period where we take 2 penalties in, the space of less than 2 minutes.
And another thing we saw this weekend that between the two of us made us very happy was the Usako Ando, Riley Funk, Trevor Kuntar line back together again. Had been together most of the season, and then going into the series with Lincoln a few weeks ago, you saw that line broken up. And we had talked about at the time, maybe because the vast majority of the Phantoms offense had been coming from that line, maybe moving some players around, trying to spread the wealth around. In the end, if you look back on it, hindsight being 2020, really did not seem to work. The Phantoms offensive production just overall just all but disappeared. This past weekend, we see that line back together again, and the results over, the games with Chicago and Muskegon, between the 3 of them, in those 2 games, 3 goals and 4 assists from that line.
Yeah, again, it's the case of you might be putting all of your eggs into one basket, but it's better to at least have a basket.
Yeah, that's a pretty good basket to have.
Yeah, definitely. We might have had a little bit of success in Lincoln trying to spread it around, but I think at that point, it was mostly just Trevor Kuntar trying to play Superman.
Yeah, so I mean, happy times are here again. It's good to be back in that kind of in that mindset again. As much as we'll criticize from time to time on here, definitely praise where praise is due. Especially the Phantoms penalty killing, whatever extra work was put in between the players, the coaches, they definitely deserve humongous props because it was just a complete 180 from where they were before.
Yeah, we managed to keep Chicago from scoring any on us on the power play. I think only D-Saint failed, scored on us, so we didn't hear Gunnar Wolf Fontaine's name called.
No, he was off the score sheet that game.
Always a good thing not to hear their announcer howling.
Yeah. Very good announcer. I did make it a point to tweet him after the game. He was a very good announcer, but yeah, I'm thankful I didn't have to hear the howling in my earbuds while I was listening to that game. Moving on from last weekend, we get to this point in the season where it becomes a grind. This can get pretty boring if it's just recap last weekend, preview next weekend. So we're definitely into the grind of it now. So we're trying to come up with ideas for fillers, and one idea that we kicked around was if we came up with our own suggestions for promotional nights at the Covelli Center. Unfortunately, that didn't work out too well. I could not come up with anything, and Justin, the only thing you came up with was...
bungee jumping from the rafters of the Covelli Center with Sparky.
because what could go wrong there?
I mean, everyone trusts the sturdy construction of the Covelli Center.
But then you know, if it goes horribly wrong, you kind of end up with this scenario. You've got bodies all over the ice. You know, that's going to clog up the Zamboni.
I think you get the Chuck-a-Puck kids to come out and clear them off.
Oh, God, there's an image right there. They're going to have the ice crew kids come out and scrape them up. So this is why we're not going with that idea.
We might have to edit this. Moving forward.
You know darn well every time you say we're going to edit this, I leave it in just because you said that. So
yeah.
You might have to come up with a different tactic. So moving on. So basically the idea that we ended up coming up with is instead of coming up with different promotional nights, we came up with one promotional night. And we are going to call this promotional night Fight Night. Now, in hockey, even though it's not as prevalent now as it used to be, you know, fighting is still somewhat part of the game, and kind of the logic behind it is the players policing themselves. Somebody gets a little too out of control on the ice, somebody comes along, tries to knock them out, you know, kind of say, hey, we're done with this. We think the fans should be afforded the same luxury as the players are during the game. So, just an example here, say you're in line at the concession stand, and the person in front of you orders 5 hot dogs on Dollar Hot Dog Night and a basket of chicken strips, and then wants to stand there and throw a fit and keep the line backed up because the concession stand doesn't have a low-calorie ranch dipping sauce. You should be able to challenge this person to a fight during the intermission. You go out onto the ice, you're given, gloves, you're given a hat, a helmet, and you get to duke it out right there on the ice and take care of it.
Yeah, no liability here. Lawyers will be perfectly good with that. Legal approves.
Yeah. So here's another example. You're at the game, and you have those parents sitting next to you that brought their kids to the game, and their kids are running wild all over the place. They're running up and down the stairs, all through the concourse, doing everything except watching the game or even just simply sitting in their seat.
I hate that, yeah.
While the parent is sitting there paying absolutely no attention and posting on Facebook about how wonderful their family fun night is going, while they have no clue where their kids are. These people, you should be able to call them out. You go out onto the ice at intermission, helmet, gloves, fight, you're good to go. Now, let's say, and this one is my biggest pet peeve, is when you have that person who sits in the seat behind you, that they feel the need to take it upon themselves that every time you get up out of your seat, the back of your seat turns into their footrest.
Hey, wait, you sit behind me.
No, but I just do the man spreading behind you. I don't actually put my feet up on the back of your seat.
Oh, okay.
Well, that and you hardly ever leave your seat, so if I did put my feet up on the back of your seat, I'd be kicking you in the back of the head. My shoe print would be on the back of your head, so not really something you have to worry about, but it's something I tend to deal with all the time. So, on fight night, gloves, helmet, fight, done.
Hey.
I mean, just as simple as that. I'll give one final example. Say you're one of the kids on the ice crew, and during the official breaks, you have to skate out onto the ice and shovel all the slush from the goal crease and everything like that. And as you're skating to the goal, you end up biting it and falling flat on your face. And some jerk sitting up against the glass decides to start beating on the glass in celebration of this small child falling over. Helmet, gloves, fight, over.
I'm a dead man. Yeah, suddenly this idea doesn't sound so good.
For those of you who don't know the story, was it last season or the season before? One of the ice crew kids come out onto the ice. They're coming down to the goal crease right in front of us. And this kid just wipes out. I don't know if he just felt like showing off a little bit, going a little faster than he should have been, like lost his edge. But this kid just bit it hard right in front of us. And Justin's first instinct is to stand up and start beating on the glass. And this kid stood up and shot this look at Justin that I swear to God, the only image I had in my head was Justin dead in the parking lot with a shovel imprint in the side of his head.
Won't be the first time a 9-year-old jumped me in the parking lot. Probably won't be the last.
All the pictures, all the video you take at games, everything else, why could we not have gotten a picture of that kid's face when he stood up and looked at you and just shot absolute daggers through you? for celebrating him falling in front of a couple thousand people.
I could feel murderous intent through the glass.
So, yeah, basically, I mean, that's our idea for a promotional night. If the players are able to police to each other on the ice, I think one night a year, fans in the crowd should be able to police each other in the stands. And in the end, I think everyone will be happier.
Yeah.
They'll never do it, but we can dream. Okay, so this upcoming weekend, the Phantoms will be on the road again. Thankfully, after this, they will be back home for a couple weeks, so we just got to get through this weekend. And this weekend, they're heading out to Iowa, taking on the Sioux City Musketeers. I had a hell of a time doing any research on this one, so I'm going to let you take it.
Yeah, it's kind of better than sleeping pills. They had a couple players bail on them this week. Adam Samuelson, who's a perennial bailer, bailed out on college. Now he's bailing out on Sioux City. Blake Biondi, who is a B-rank skater on the NHL scouting report, real highly touted prospect. He's going back to Minnesota to play high school hockey and finish up with his buddies. I could go through their scores, but there's not a whole lot of names on there that are really, highly recognizable. They're a 500 team, so exactly, horrible, but, they have a couple decent young players. Joel Mata, I guess, looks like he's going to be a pretty decent player. But, yeah, just not a whole lot there to scout. Their goalie, Ethan Heider, he looks good on paper. What I've seen of him looks good, but stats on paper through 10 games doesn't really give you a real big picture.
But yeah, this weekend, the Phantoms will be taking on the Musketeers. The games will be on Saturday and Sunday. The game on Saturday will be at 8:05 our time, and the game on Sunday will be at 4:05 our time. For those of you without the benefit of hockey TV, I know last weekend, and it's something a lot of the teams like to use, is that MixLR or Mixler or whatever the heck it's called, app for, streaming the games and stuff like that. Sioux City's games are actually streamed on a local radio station, and then that is streamed online through iHeartRadio, but I will definitely work on finding the links and getting them tweeted out for anybody without the benefit of hockey TV that still wants to listen in. So other than that, that's pretty much it for this episode. Again, as always, thank you everyone for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and again, there's that little bell next to the subscribe button. You hit that. Every time we release a new episode, you will be notified right away. Any comments, any questions, any fan scenarios you want to add for Fight Night, comment below. Also, make sure to follow us on social media. The links will be in the description. My handle name, I changed it. I've been wanting to do it for a while. I finally got around to doing it. It's still me, so again, everyone, thank you for listening, and we will talk with you all next week.
Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
Oh, really?